Okay, let me ask you guys this. People who are fans of Borderlands are just excited for what the potential of Wonderlands could be. Let me ask you guys this. How would you like, in an ideal world, how would you like the support for Borderlands to go forward? But anyways, as far as post-launch content for the game, I like that idea of like them. I like the idea of them releasing weapons that like you can only get from doing a certain thing. But I feel like Borderlands or Gearbox has never really done the thing that I think they're gonna do in Wonderlands, which they've already mentioned that there is dungeons. Which to me is kind of what I'd hoped for the game, but I'd hope they actually do it right, because they kind of had dungeons / the Varelsi, whatever they're called, like you would go into them, go through a bunch of stuff, fight an enemy, and then be done. Completely, to me, missed the mark. It took such a long time to get to the boss. There was really no way to hyper push your advantage, and it was just a slow process, so it didn't really feel like the thing that your community was conditioned to love, which was just flipping the coin and seeing if you could get something good. It made it so long that people were kind of like, I don't know if I want to do this. But that to me would be what I would like to have, except to me, I would like a dungeon that like randomly, how do I put it? Like, is ever changing, you know what I mean? So like there's different set pieces that can be changed. What is it called? Procedurally generated. So like not too procedurally generated, but just enough to kind of give you some spice whilst you're pushing through an encounter. Like instead of you having to push through an entire encounter, and then at the end, the last boss, after dedicating like at the most speed run of speed runs, 15 minutes to get there, you're awarded a chance to get one thing. And what happens if you don't? Oh, well, that 15 minutes is a waste. That sucks, you know? Whereas if you had 3 bosses lined up between 3 different segments of this procedurally generated dungeon, and each one of those bosses had a chance of dropping something, and no exclusivity was given to the very first or last boss, but maybe it exponentially or slightly increased your chance of getting the legendary drop chance by killing the first boss, because I realized people would just kill the first boss and then reset it, so they'd have to give incentive to like, no, the next boss is gonna have a slightly higher chance of having the thing. That'd be a cool way to take the reality of players and how they interface with the game in a good way, I think. But anyways, to me, that's something that I'm excited for, is the idea of there being like, hey, we added a big update to the game, instead of it just being like, hey, here's a cute little like Twitch extension event, you know, or here's like a faction allegiance event, whatever, like just something that feels like, why am I participating in this? This is gonna go away in 2 seconds. Like I'm better off just farming normally. Like what? So to me, the idea that they would like be like, okay, here's a new event, here's a brand new dungeon, and also 3 new bosses and 3 new items. Because to me, that's the one thing that I also find is a problem with Borderlands, is when the game releases, there's like 15 to 20 legendaries just thrown at you, and a lot of times they don't get their moment to shine. But I feel like if you had like 4 months after launch, and they're like, okay, now we're gonna give you 3 every 2 weeks. We're gonna give you 3 legendary items. You're gonna see if they are compatible with your gear, and slowly but surely your build's gonna get better and better and better. Your gear is gonna get more and more fun content after launch. Like that's the thing that it excites me, because to me, again, the Borderlands has always hit, just because of the combat and the builds. I'm happy, but I am curious to see if they're able to make it stick with the post-launch content. Ladies and gentlemen, I was absolutely right. I'm feeling good about myself right now. I called it. I'm a witch. We killed it in that way. Anyways, but yes, ladies and gentlemen, we actually called it on stream. I was just talking out my ass, just rattling off nonsense of things I wanted to see within Wonderlands. But yes, the clip you just seen was from a live stream where we were just sitting back on Sunday a couple days ago, essentially when this information was not readily available. And I just said this is something that I was hoping that they would add in the game, and boom bam, they did. Kind of a tell though, because they talked about dungeons. But that's not quite this. This is called the Chamber of Chaos, or the Chaos Chambers. This is a Tiny Tina's Wonderlands endgame activity that seemingly is pretty interesting. It's kind of reminiscent of some things you've had in Borderlands 3, but let's get into that. Anyways, a quick TLDR of what this is, just so we don't have to spend too much time talking about what the minutia of everything is. Essentially, there is a new endgame activity called the Chaos Chambers. Awesome. The Chaos Chamber is a randomly generated piece of endgame content, which is really, really exciting. They're going to be constantly interchanging, I think, the map layout a little bit, as well as changing the enemies. And there's a lot of configurations of the enemies that we're going to be fighting within this domain. Now, there seems to be 3 phases to this Chamber of Chaos, basically having a bunch of ads and then a boss seemingly at the end, although there are side objectives that reward you a currency. Now, there are 2 currencies that predominantly drop within the Chaos Chambers. One of those currencies is similar to like the Iridium-like thing in this game, which basically is going to give you the ability to re-roll your legendaries or weapons. I believe it's specifically re-rolling the passive anointment kind of buff. Maybe if there are some like substats within your spells, maybe that can also be like re-rolled. That's yet to be seen, but yes. And then the other currency that you're going to be getting is exclusive to the Chamber of Chaos. Essentially, it's going to be butt stallions like shards, and at the end of the encounter, you're going to have to spend all of your shards because you cannot take them with you out of the encounter. So it's kind of like a score that you actually spend at the end of the encounter on these cute little Tiny Tina inspired little bunnies that are sucking down butt stallion core crystals, whatever it is. Anyways, so that is the minutia of the thing. There's a new endgame content. It's randomly generated. It's going to reward you purple to legendary gear, ideally, after you spend the currency that you just accrued after going through this encounter, which to me is a really clever way of doing something that I hopefully maybe put in the clip as well, where I was saying that people will always go with the path of least resistance, the most efficient bang for your buck, and yeah, that's what made so many people frustrated about immunity phases within bosses, because it made one boss that didn't have that like the sole proprietor of everyone's gameplay for efficiency's sake, and you let all these other cool bosses just waste away because of that stupid immunity phase. So people will find the path of least resistance. That's always been the case in Borderlands. So the fact that they're like, okay, how do we patch people just like the first boss had a chance to drop legendaries? Well, if it was faster to go to that first boss, kill him, and reset, then they would just do that constantly. But the fact that you are going to have to push through this encounter, and you are going to start accruing this crystal, and the more you kill, the more side quests, kind of like quick, not side quests, but there's like optional objectives where you can defend a person, break a statue, whatever, and that will accrue you more points, and then at the end, given you have even more points, then you can get even more loot. So it has a system that feeds back into itself rather than I feel like it almost accounts for the community's fuckery, which I'm always a part of, by the way. I'm that player for sure. I have limited time and I want to have a lot of bang for my buck. The fact that this is going to be a randomly generated thing is awesome. The fact that we're going to be able to kill 2 birds with one stone, you're going to be gaining the currency that allows you to re-roll your legendaries. It just seems like it's way, way more optimal. You're going to be getting weapons. You're going to be having fun and killing things in a massive kill fest. Also, the one thing that I was worried about, but I think now that I think about it, I don't think that's how it's going to work, but I was worried that, for instance, one of the things that I love about this idea is you're just slaughtering. It's like just a kill fest, essentially. Because in games like Destiny, which I used to play a lot of, they introduced something called the Prison of Elders. And this was really touted as being like this kind of horde mode, just go in there and chew everything up, gun it, all that. But what it ended up being, it was just an objective, like a weird objective kind of clear thing, where they added synthetic difficulty by just making it so that you had to like stand on a plate while a bunch of enemies just barraged you with AoE hits, and it was just weird. It was not a kill fest at all. It was an objective-based game mode that was kind of weird, given your light level and shit like that. But I was worried that that was going to be this, but I think it's all optional. So you can have the choice of like defending a statue, or defending this person, or breaking this thing, or killing this special high value target, and that will reward you crystals. Now it's yet to be seen if that's worth taking the time to do that, or just punching on through. I'm sure the community will min-max to utter hell. The other thing I didn't mention, I wanted to make everything tight. Essentially, there's one more thing about this cool Chamber of Chaos. essentially there's going to be functionally leaderboards. Leaderboards where they would show you your clear time and all those things. Also, one thing I didn't mention, God, I'm the worst. The one thing I didn't mention is that there's going to be curses. So as you're progressing through the chamber, you're going to have various choices to make it harder, or you can make it easier. Some people who had actual hands-on experience said that it was kind of a mixed bag. Some people just wanted to have an easy time, chill, cut through. The other people wanted the highest possible difficulty tier because it gave the best loot. And it's really cool because, like you guys can see in the gameplay, you have a choice between what statue you want to give, which is really interesting for farming. It's still general, so we still have like the chaos of Borderlands loot. You could just keep wishing for a pistol type and just get the wrong pistol every time, but at least it's some way to kind of hone your expertise, whereas hopefully there'll still be the grind of like farming for a specific legendary that drops from a specific person, a boss, I mean. So hopefully there's two ways to break that egg. I'm not sure if this is the better way or the other way is the better way. Probably this way, because you're also having the chance to re-roll your gear, getting the best possible anointment on your stuff and things like that. Oh, also there's blessings. I didn't mention that. Sorry, there's blessings. So yeah, you'll be able to have certain challenge buffs. But then there's also curses. So I think there's give and take. I do know that if you have curses, they give you a benefit at the end. So like if you're having a harder time, they're going to reward you with more crystals or gems or something. Also, by the way, because this is an end game activity, if you only have 3 lives, and that's across everybody in the event. So if you're playing co-op and your friend dies 2 times, you're only having 1 life left across the board of friends. One of the things I want to talk to you guys about, and this is the thing that I always like talking to you guys about, it's not necessarily the specific details because we'll figure that out eventually, but it's about what the implementation of this could mean and what you guys think that may do. So one of the things that worries me quite a bit always, and I talked about this in the live stream, I probably didn't put it in there because it's far too long of a clip, but Borderlands has always been really, really good about finding the path of least resistance, even though it may not be for the betterment of the funnest time that you could possibly have. So Borderlands, especially towards the midpoint of Borderlands 3's life cycle, it had this weird thing where everyone was scaling their builds and their efficiency after the highest possible tier of mayhem level, and it kind of got really messy really fast. It made it so that only like damage centered things and weird gimmicks around how to avoid dying form, same as always, grog nozzle and whatnot was always a meta thing. But the reason why I'm worried is specifically the blessings and curses specifically attached to the reward systems of the game. Because to me, all that means, like, again, you could put one legendary behind the highest possible tier, and the community will now rate them at the highest possible tier. Because if you can't clear everything in the game, then your build's not going to be good enough. Your thing isn't going to be worth anything. Despite there's only like one thing in the game, and it'll just take a longer time to chip away at it. It doesn't mean your build won't do it usually. So yeah, that's what worries me is whenever they have an end game thing that to me is directly translated into rewards. So the harder it is, the more rewards you get. All that does is usually make people like follow around one particular kind of build or one particular kind of source. So if the source is survivability, that's different. I haven't seen that usually done in a lot of games, but most of the time it's damage. Most of the time it's the enemies are so, especially in Borderlands, the enemies are so goddamn tanky that you just heavily invest in whatever gets you the most amount of damage at all. Even if it's less fun or interesting or chaotic, as long as it can nuke things, then it does the job. And you'll feel like at least I have access to everything, even though I may not be playing or engaging with the game in the best possible way. So yeah, that to me is the only thing that freaks me out is whenever you attach the reward systems to the most and I don't think I think you should have something there, but if it was like cosmetics, like if you beat the hardest thing, you did all the challenges, you just fucking juice yourself and you got cool cosmetic, you're sure. But when it's like a legendary that almost feeds into the same cycle of like, oh, here's this legendary that's really good for damage or stuff like that. I just noticed that I've rarely ever seen in any of the Borderlands games anything that's like a tank build, because there's no point. Something needs to die, and a lot of times how they scale things in Borderlands is just by fucking juicing the hell out of their health. So I'm curious about what this could mean in the grand scheme of things. How do I put it? To me, it feels like the community's hunger for loot surpasses their enjoyment of playing. So even if you're doing something that is literally just killing an enemy and you're getting all the loot, you could look me dead in the face and say, I had no fun in that hour, but at least I have all the gear now. People would do that, but it's like, but wait, you're having a significantly less fun time, and also the legendaries that you're getting is like they mean nothing to you because you have 8. You know, like it gets messy. And I say this as a person who always partakes in the same thing. So then you're killing the boss and now you're getting loot. So to me, it's like, okay, no, this makes sense. This makes sense that they hyper stacked value into this event or this chamber, this end game thing, so that people really had incentive because you're getting 6 monetary strings rather than just in Borderlands 3 you'd kill the loot goblins and then it would drop fucking everything. So you're like, all right, well, why would I do anything else besides killing the loot goblins when the side quests don't give me anything that good? A lot of the purple gear in Borderlands 3 was not that good, which was side quest rewards. Even the uniques were not that good. So hopefully they've adjusted the reward systems to be in the proper line again. But yes, essentially, ladies and gentlemen, this is a very cool idea. Also, I did mention this is a break from the looking at the skill trees. We'll get back at that in a hot minute. Hi, ladies and gentlemen, me here in post and or editing, no face cam, because this was filmed a couple hours ago, and then they just dropped more on us. So awesome, and yeah, this is gonna rub you guys a little bit the wrong way. Some of you, they released the season pass trailer, yes, before the game released, which honestly I don't think is that bad. The reason why is because we've always known DLC comes for Borderlands, always. So yeah, the problem is if we get in there and the game has insufficient content for our purchase, which we'll have to wait and see if that is the case. But none of the Borderlands, for me at least, have been that way. At the very least, we got 4 playthroughs, a bunch of characters to invest in, a bunch of legendaries, decently long story, and a fuck ton of side quests, and a cool world to explore. So don't ever really feel like that was my experience, but I can understand some of you being jaded from other games having been cruel to you. All that I would say is waiting to see if the game has enough value on its own, and then see if you want the season pass. But alas, what is the Vesper, Mysterious Mirrors, and powers, new class? Well, those are obvious. Those are more and those are all a lot more on the nose. Essentially, ladies and gentlemen, what you're going to be attaining in this first season pass for Wonderlands is going to be a brand new location with this crazy as hell looking character called Vesper. Essentially, this location is kind of an amusement park, kind of like a scenario, but essentially it has a lot of mirrors. These mirrors will take us to a boss-like event that seems to have phases. It's not going to just be jump in the portal, fight the boss. And if it is, it's probably you're gonna fight the boss, they're gonna go to an area, they're gonna teleport to another area, you're gonna follow them. Yeah. The cool thing about this is if you have the season pass, the characters and bosses that exist within each unique dungeon/mirror are going to be fed directly back into the Chaos Dungeon itself, which is wonderful. The one thing they haven't confirmed yet is whether the environments that each boss floor or mirror, if that is also able to be transitioned into the random assortment of awesome set pieces, because I sure as hell would hope they would be. But this is season pass content that is going to directly feed back in to the end game, but not isolate it entirely. So you're still going to be able to play with the Chaos Chambers, but this will just make it so that you have more runs. I imagine each one of these bosses is going to have a chance with a bunch of new legendaries to drop, stuff like that. And yes, so that's what we're getting. We're getting a special new environment, which is going to take us to other adventures, I assume in a DLC form. By the way, guys, Season 1 is coming out April 21st, a couple weeks after, of course, the game launches on March 25th. But this is part 1 of the Season Pass. That's going to make some of you excited, some of you not. Again, hold the phone. We might be surprised. We might be like, holy shit, there's tons of value here. Be patient. I wouldn't suggest going out and getting the season pass lickety split. Wait and see until you hear from content creators and or players on forums, Twitter, whatever, if the game and overall seasonal content is worth it. But alas, yes. Now, the other things that we're going to be getting is a 7th class. So essentially one more subclass or skill tree to get access to. They did say that this one would be unique and special. I don't know what that means. To me, it would be wonderful, and this would be a good mic drop moment for like a desired class that changes at the meta. At least to me. And that would be a Krieg-like power stance with your weapon. So actually being able to see your badass new melee weapon and charge forward and just slash and slay. Maybe having deeper lunges and stuff like that. I'm talking out my ass here, but that would be cool. But we do know we're getting one more subclass with the first season pass. The second thing that we're going to be getting is stuff that you might already be aware of, basically cosmetics, stuff like that. And yeah, honestly, this, well, it's yet to be seen whether this has enough value to be really desired, but the fact that we're getting a bunch of new encounters, a bunch of new bosses, and those bosses may be having legendaries that are attached to them that can make and spice up the gameplay, and also spells attached to them and stuff like that, makes it seem very exciting, at least in that regard. Another thing to take note of that's a little bit sketchy is every single time you complete these portals, these mirrors, they are going to exponentially increase the damage. Fuck me dead. Jesus Christ. Okay, so so the more times you go into the portal things, they're going to get exponentially harder. So to me, this is very much seeming like they have borrowed this from Outriders, which is the expedition rank. So the more you, basically, if you're able to do the run, it will give you another tier in which you can do the run at a harder tier. And the thing is it usually, well, at least in that game, it got to be a weird thing where if you wanted a legendary, you had to make it to a certain tier, and in order to kill things, you needed to have like a crazy amount of damage, and enemies one-shot you. So hopefully they don't take all of the things from Outriders, but I think this is where it's kind of akin to. Okay, this is interesting, ladies and gentlemen. It says this. So every single time we go through the challenge and we kill greater and greater bosses, you guys may be saying, well, what's the value to doing that, Grin? Well, apparently this. Every single time you'll kill a boss or vanquish a soul, you'll get something called Lost Souls, which is another currency. Great. So many currencies. Anyways, what this currency allows you to do is spin Vesper's Wheel of Fate, which each spin of this creepy contraption, you'll be rewarded with new legendary weapons and gear, and unique cosmetics. Okay, so I'm curious. So I hope this is what it means. When we go into this special encounter and we fight these damn bosses, hopefully the bosses themselves have a special chance of dropping a legendary, and hopefully there's a few legendaries that are maybe a step above the rest in this magical fate chance-based spinning wheel. But if the killing the bosses is neutral and they drop nothing and it's all hindered around this spin wheel, and you get more lost souls based on the harder you're able to do the clear speed. Again, like we talked about prior, I think this will just incentivize having to do like bazillions of damage just to get enough souls, just to be efficient at grinding and spinning the wheel. But hopefully we're able to get some legendaries, and then there's a few unique ones attached to the thing. But if this is the sole proprietor of how you get new legendaries is by doing the spin, it's a little too early to judge. But if it requires a shit ton of souls, and you only get a little bit of souls for just doing like the basic versions of each run, then that's shitty. Or what happens if you just get really lucky and get the same duplicate? Hopefully there's duplicate protection in this spinning wheel, or else that seems like a pitfall. I know this video is getting to a little bit later, but that's precisely why I always like to talk to you guys about the ideas that the information is trying to talk to us about, not necessarily the crispness and the fastness of the information, because I know so many people can do that faster than me. But I do like to think about the variables such as, how the community is going to intake this and why it's being created in the way that it's being created. And let me know what you guys think about all those things. Anyways, thank you so much for your time. Hope you guys do enjoy the rest of your day. Talk to me about Wonderlands when we stream, because we stream goddamn always. And yes, I always love talking to you guys. And thank you so much for spending some time with me today. Hopefully I can see you guys again in the next video. Thank you again, and goodbye.